Hey, good afternoon now, guys. Congratulations to Argentina and Messi. Um, it is December 18th, 2022, creativity lesson, I think number 26 or so. And we'll check in with Tom Hardison. How are you doing today, sir?
I had looked before. I don't know if you did.
Let's try again. Ernie, how are we doing?
Doing well, thank you. I may have to cut out early. I'm not really sure what's going on. Kind of things are hectic right now for us. So, but anyway, in case you see me waving and leaving, that's what's going on.
Okay. Chunlong, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Everything's good here. Another week. Try to celebrate Christmas right now, even though, that's foreign to me. But we did celebrate that anyway in Canada for Chinese.
Yeah. And Kyun, how are we doing?
Very good. Still trying to decompress
Yeah.
from the World Cup. So phenomenal game. World class in every way.
Yep.
So yeah, good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
top to bottom, first class game. Sanal, how are you?
Yep, very well, thank you. Nothing much more to add. Watch the game. Fantastic. Couldn't watch the penalties. Could not. Actually stepped away and thought I will just go back
can't
in
hear
when it's
you.
done.
Maybe it's my sound card's been acting strange. Just a moment.
Okay.
All good, Ken.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
And Jeff?
Yeah, all good. It's been a very cold week over here. It snowed, I think probably towards the end of our call last week, or maybe just after, which is not so usual for London. And what's even less usual is that the snow is still on the ground to an extent, although it's warming up rapidly today, finally. So it's probably going to get up to the what's that, 30, I don't know, 60s or something like that overnight. So it's kind of a weird warming and a really weird cold week. And so yeah, anyway, that's been us this week. Then yeah, tried to decompress after the World Cup, and man, too stressful. And then so both Sol and I couldn't watch the end. We just thought, okay, we'll see what happened. We couldn't watch the penalties. We'll see what happens after. We'll just catch the score somewhere, and then probably go and rewatch the penalties, because then it's not so emotional. Well, all good.
Yeah. Hey, well, I got you. How do you guys feel about taking a week off for next week is Christmas, and then the U.S. guys day after Christmas? Let's just plan on taking a day off next weekend and pick it up on the following. Listen to the room and get on with it. See what we come up with today. On it was part one of like integrating creativity and innovation, and so here we go.
I can go. I know you nodded. My word of last week is playful. What I did is play with collapsing dragon. I use Forex tester to do the simulated trades. So this time I'll take shorts only. So I don't take any long signals, only take shorts. So I think get a little bit better now. And I traded 5 days last week. Not as aggressively as before. So my result is, if I don't count the commissions, my net result is slightly positive, about 0.7 R. That's my last week trading. Still have a lot of issues. So for the next 2 weeks, I will summarize my mistakes in the live trading, study my charts, about 290 trades. I will find out what is the mistake I made, which I can easily fix. And I will focus on fix those mistakes, start from the easiest one, not the hard, difficult, emotional, psychological mistakes. I will start from something easier. So I'm thinking, there's a saying, 1,000 cuts to death. What that means for me, when the symbol into a sideways quiet channel, I will take trades, then exit it with a loss and take it again, exit it again, so with losses. So I think that's my 1,000 cuts to death. So my next focus will be on those quiet sideways channels, and then study pinch and stretches, and learn to grind. To do my today's lesson, I thought it would be a good idea go back to previous lessons. So I watched lesson 18, redo lesson 18, redo lesson 19. I watched that video again. Now I remember, can talk about a gentleman grinding for 18 months. So I'm nowhere close to 18 months. So I have confidence to improve in another 10 months, maybe a whole year. That's my trading and work in progress. I did read today's lesson 26, twice, try to figure out what is the innovation process, because the lesson says the important thing is the focus on innovation process. So my question is, what process you talk about? How to be innovative, use my creativity. And I think that read the lesson twice, try to figure out the process. And it's made me move back to lesson 18 and 19. My plan is to redo 18, 19, 20 to 25. Then I finish my 26 with a innovation process. But it's not clear for me what is the process is. So I have to figure out that out. I think the essence will be what Ken says, fill by design, properly fill by design. My plan also have a goal for this holiday season, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I will write a essay on ruthless risk management. That's one action item for me in next 2 or 3 weeks. That's what I want to talk. I hope.
Ernie.
Sorry. I guess I was really thinking on the lesson that it seemed like we have problems and opportunities, and innovation is how I get from turning a problem into an opportunity. Um, and I guess I thought a lot about that, and innovation in itself. I guess it seemed like in looking at different innovations for the past, there been a lot of interesting ones. You know, we hear about the 3M or whatever it is. You know, our sticky notes, how that was a mistake, and I read something about somebody that the invention of Novocaine was to help in amputation, and that doctors and patients weren't too keen on the idea of using Novocaine because then you're awake through that process, and who wants to do that? So, so that went from being used for surgery, that the dentist started using that, and that so that was more fitting use of innovation being used. And one of the things that I really thought was interesting was looking at or reading about after the war, that UNIVAC was the big computer producer, and that so computers were being designed for scientific work. And then business was interested in a machine that could do some mundane tasks like payroll. And UNIVAC had the most advanced machine, but they weren't interested in business applications. You know, academics and science was more important. So then IBM basically redesigned what was UNIVAC's machine, and so they decided that they would use that for the mundane application of payroll, and now you don't hear about UNIVAC anymore, and IBM's the big deal. So, and then I was reading about how innovation failures become opportunities, and that Ford designed the Edsel, and I don't know why they ever thought that was a great car. It was an ugly, looking car, but that was one of the biggest failures or new car failures in the automotive industry, but it became the foundation for much of Ford's later success. That whenever the Edsel bombed, Ford looked into how they were designing and marketing their cars, and the assumption had always been that the market was segmented by income groups. And so Ford took a different viewpoint, and felt like the new principle of segmentation was what we call lifestyles. And so that new perspective, I guess, resulted in the Mustang, and that gave the Ford, a distinctive personality, and reestablished it as an industry leader. So people have used innovation. Well, not all innovation has been successful, but then you use innovation to innovate the innovative idea that you had that didn't work. So it was interesting to read that. And then, I think the exercise was that we were supposed to look at our problems and how we would use and see how, coming up with a problem that called for a creative solution. I guess I was trying to think of the problems that I have that required innovative solutions, and I just made me realize how blessed I am, and that we have few problems really when you really get down to it. At least I do. But I did think about some of the stuff that I've run into. I've had some mobility issues over this year, and so little things like just taking the trash to the curb. How do I do that? And it took a while. Starting out, people were helping me out, but I wanted to get back to a normalcy, as soon as I could. So then I was trying to figure out, how I can do that, and I was doing all kinds of silly things, like take the trash can in the garage, and could I drive it to the curb, which was a fiasco. And So I think that's why the neighbors were helping me out, because they would see what I was doing. They just felt so sorry for me. They'd come over and say, well, just let us take care of it. We don't, we'd rather you not come up with some innovative ideas, because, and they were right, because I think we finally, I had one thing where I finally got the trash to the curb, and this was like at night, and it's raining and the wind's blowing. And so I'm trying to get back into the house, and the wind blows the trash can over. And so now it's like, well, that didn't work. So I was thinking, you really try to I use my investing tactics, the planning, preparation, execution, and then reassess it. So I thought, well, I planned it, or I really prepared it. You sat down and I really decided, here's how I'm going to do it. And then you get prepared for it. Do I have everything I need? Have I thought this through? And then it's like, okay, let's just do it. Let's execute. And then, like I said, you run into the rain, the wind, and now we got trash all over the neighborhood. And then you assess it and you think, was that a good idea? And I'm not really sure. And what am I going to do differently? So I think I try to be creative and come up with different ideas for different things. Most of the time they work. A lot of times it's just part of life, and you just sit back and you just know that whenever it doesn't go well, you're going to think on it later on, and we can all laugh about it. And I look forward to laughing, but sometimes you just really wonder if you know what you're doing. But it's all part of life, and I think it's really been good to think about how I do things and how I can do things differently, and I do apply it to my investing. I think that I do try to. I never would have thought that was something where you innovate, but I guess you really do. And I think about the Warren Buffett. Always been a big fan of his, and it's always fascinating to read about what people have done in the past, and how some of them, you think they're so successful, and like James Livermore, I think that whenever he died, he was bankrupt, but what a brilliant mind, and the things that he did, and the innovation that he brought to investing, so I do. I know that innovation is how important it is, and I really enjoy trying to do that and be creative. And I always thought that I was, but a lot of what other people do really amaze me, and I think it's just amazing to see that. So I'm trying to keep this really brief because I know we got a lot going on. So anyway, that's my story this week. Aho.
Ken.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, sorry. I'm just I guess I'm still decompressing, but so um let's start with a recap of my word last week. And thanks to Jeff for coordinating, was edge. I think that's because firstly, I think in the notes I said something, and Ken made a note that it's a subtle edge for me to have, I think, noticed the PSAR flip pattern, I think, and to trade that. So that's one thing. And the other thing that was kind of bubbling up was the edge of chaos. And the edge of chaos, I knew I heard that phrase before, but actually I looked it up in Wiki. Apparently the edge of chaos theory is a thing. So and it's the transition space between order and disorder, which sounded like what we were doing last week. So people watching this is probably thinking, hey, have I on the right lesson, or am I still on last week's lesson? But anyway, so I'll read some of this from Wiki. I found it interesting anyway. So it's an adaptation to the edge of chaos. So adaptation plays a vital role for all living organisms and systems. And all of them are constantly changing their inner properties to better fit in the current environment, which again seemed like what we would, sounded like what we were doing last week. And then the most important instruments for the adaptation are the self-adjusting parameters inherent for many natural systems. Sorry, this is a bit technical. But I thought the self-adjusting thing was quite interesting. And apparently they have a name for this phenomenon, which is adaptation to the edge of chaos, and refers to the idea that many complex adaptive systems seem to intuitively evolve toward a regime near the boundary between chaos and order, which seems quite fascinating to me, because they're not like in the order state, but you tend towards order and the border between order and chaos, which maybe is, in trading it's similar to the compound critical state, if you want to put it that way. And down there, you're at the edge, and the move is going to happen, but you don't know whether it's going up or down. So it sounded quite interesting to me. Anyway, so that was my word for last week. And then this week, I have many of the same things that Chunlong was talking about process and what is that. So maybe I will frame my whole kind of what I found out in a trade which really bugged me on Friday. So I traded ex-US Steel, and that was Ken's trade of the day, right? While Ken went away happy with 6R, I ended up with -1R. I was scratching my head. I said, yeah, how did I manage to do that? Can I share this? Is it worthwhile sharing the screen? I mean, sorry, is it okay? I think it's easier to show where I went wrong. I actually I didn't prepare in time to post anyway. But I was thinking, maybe I just don't, it's embarrassing, but maybe it's a lesson to be learned for somebody. I can do the share screen now. Okay, here you go. Hopefully that comes up. Can you see that? Okay, cool. So anyway, here's the start of the day, and I wasn't actually trading for all of this time. So I know Ken already had 2 trades, and this trade that he had a OR3 here that reversed, and then he stopped and reversed and got this. I think it was about 3R, and that was 1R. So I actually didn't get into a trade. I don't know whether you can see whether it's big enough. But so I waited and I entered the trade here, which is the green thing. I think Ken entered the blue thing, right, just underneath. But these are all fine margins, because when I entered here, it went up and it came back down here, and my trade scratched. And that little bit from there made all the difference, because Ken had the psychological advantage or experience to stay in all the way up here. So then I stayed out, and then there was this consolidation, and my thinking was, okay, it's hit the high of the day. Is this going to go up, or is this going to, hit resistance and come back down? So I was unsure, so I didn't re-enter straight away. But then when it went up here, I thought, okay, I will re-enter the trade. And of course, I re-entered here, and it went up, and it came back all the way down. So I think I almost scratched, was positive. Then I had to sit back and analyze the situation, and it started moving up above the high, and I was thinking, is this going to go higher, or is this going to come back? And it went higher, and I went in there, and this is like Chunlong's death by 1,000 cuts, right? It starts right here. So I entered there, it came back here. I thought, okay, it's strong rejection, so I stopped and reversed down here, and then of course it went back up. And then subsequently, I had a scratch straight here, and then subsequently actually made this move, which I managed to take. Yeah. So all this messing around, instead of getting, you know, the whatever it is, a plus R, I ended up with a negative 1R, and I didn't play much the rest of the day. All right, let me get out of that. Don't want to show it too long. I'm not sure how I can. So, okay, stop share. All right, so that's my trade, and then on my exercise, I can find my sheet. Okay, go back to it. So on my exercise one, you know, that was what I was on my mind. It was like a problem. I said, well, how am I going to deal with this stuff? You know, what is the problem in the first place, and how am I going to deal with it? So I just wrote this down, and it is just a list, and some of it is follows the what the exercise says. Write down the first solution, and some of it just prompted more questions, and I need to go and look at what the solution is. Or like the first thing, which I've been telling myself for a while, is really don't chase, right? It just and I did, and that was, I guess, my mistake. And don't be in a hurry to stop and reverse. I wrote that down, but I had to analyze to see whether that was the right analysis or not. Then I found something. I thought, well, what happens when I have 2 losses in a row to start of the day? You know, that's not great. And do I actually have a plan to deal with things like that? And how do I deal with it? So that was a question that you know, I was prompted while thinking about it. And I wrote other things. I need to be clear. You know, my will needs to be there. You know, trader's mind needs to be there. And I wasn't. I knew that yesterday I wasn't there. So that was a mistake. But how do you actually not do it? Don't pull the trigger when you're in that situation. And then other solutions, like number 4, now I've got like try trading maybe the 1 minute chart. Maybe that might help. Maybe the 5 minute chart, that might look different. I don't know. I have to look at it. And then I was thinking, you know, if the action goes to 0.8 R, would I take that as if it's my first trade, so I have something in the bag, or is it better to put it all to risk, and then you might end up with a scratch or a small loss? You know, how is that work for me? I don't know. I need to work that out. I think the other thing that's kind of might drive me was I was thinking, what are my objectives when I'm, you know, trading? And I have kind of 2 objectives for now. Well, 2 that I've identified. There are a bunch of others. Like, you know, results wise, I said, okay, I like to make 2 R per day on average, because I think we worked out that was the kind of average win. And so, I mean, it's not like that's my average win at all. It's way below that at the minute, but I just have that objective. And then the other objective I said is to, you know, you want to find the big movers and see if you can get, you know, the ones that move more than 2R in a move, and learn how to trade that. And I'm thinking, are those 2 actually conflicting, or do they help me, or do they not help me? Don't know. So need to go and figure that out. What else is there? Then I thought about, is it my chart scale? On my chart scale properly, so that I can see whether it looks reasonable, or whether I can see the move. And I had already considered this. I mean, I always have a risk box up there, so I know at least in vis-a-vis the risk box where it is. But still, you know, because if you zoom out the chart, or if you drag the chart bigger, the bars might look more tradable than if they're tiny. So that was the other thing. What about chart clutter? Am I having too many things on there? So river, do I need the river lines there? Flat line planes, am I even trading those? Yep, something to consider. Another solution is I think which I do is to review and to kind of replay the trades to see if I would do anything differently. Because if you marked it up and it's static and you know how it goes, then it's kind of easy with hindsight to say, yeah, okay, that move was down, I should have got in here. But in real time, you know, it all looks the same leaving the station, right? You know, so that's the other thing which I thought I might do. You know, study this sniper trade of the day, of course, and keep compare to how I trade, and keep learning from those, even if I didn't trade that symbol that day. Then other things are like get a third party perspective for my trade, which is why I kind of post the charts, and which is why I shared it with you here. Maybe, you know, it helps. You don't have to answer, but it's just something I came up with. So yeah, that was my kind of thoughts on that section. And then to sum all that up, I had this word. I mean, the word was you know, Kaizen, which is make you know, atomic small improvements, micro improvements. I guess I you know, gotta keep doing that. And I think I made a note of PS, how to find the mover that is moving versus being bogged down in one that you thought was moving, but then didn't move. You know, so is that something I need to look at? I think somebody traded Tesla at a 5-hour move, and I completely missed that trying to fight my way out of, you know, X, you know, so it happens. How do I do that? So yeah, I guess then going to exercise too with all those things. I said, for me, it's like just to keep doing the paper trading as much as possible, to keep improving my process, because that's cheap. That's quite fast. I can do it all the time. That's cost me no money, no real money. Just cost me my time, which is fine. And then submit the charts for feedback. And I said, you know, this true storytelling here is really useful for kind of support for now. Don't know what happens when it ends, but and then yeah, just to be happy and grateful for all the opportunities to trade and learn. Yeah, time, will, pattern, money. Thank you, Ken, for that sniper executive summary. So I think, you know, I'll just bear those in mind. That's it from me. I hope.
Yeah, Mochi's helping me in the sunroom today. We get I'm working from the sunroom while the wood floors are being stripped and coated, and today they're sealed. So I'm living out of the sunroom with Mochi. She's yelling at the huskies who are chasing a squirrel. Life goes on. Tom.
So I'm catching up after a week away, visiting with my grandson, son and daughter-in-law. And so the asymmetric nature and understanding when is it coming in to the quiet channel and when is it going out. And this lesson this week of the 3x3 and what are the threes. So as I was going through the circles, what came up for me is 3 M's: the market and my system and process, and me as a complex system, and figuring out where am I sticking in that process? Where am I in flow and it's moving and it's working, and where am I sticking and it's not working? So what I find is working for me more and more is, for the market, the multiple time frame, multiple lens analysis, just getting a sense of what is the potential. Are we coming up on an asymmetric potential at higher and higher time frames? And how might I be ready for that? And where are we diminishing in that asymmetric at higher time frames, and it's over time compressing, to help me think about how do I want to position, how many positions I might want to take, especially if they're correlated and might go in a common direction. And so that has helped me, and still more refinement. When I think about my system and process, I'm still documenting it in as to what it is I'm doing, because I've tried a bunch of different things this year. So going back through to say, well, since I tried 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, day, hourly, I've played with time frames. So now trying to hone down what do I really want to do going into the next year as the next level of refinement, and then process. Just how do I want to check? Am I following the process consistently? And when am I not following the process? And how do I come back to following the process? And then there's me, and that's probably the biggest factor of the disconnect of when things are working and when things are not working. And the biggest piece is they're finding the point when I flip into a self-judgment, negative self-talk. Because if I'm in a trade and I've flipped from a zero state into self-talk, but because I, for whatever reason, now I'm judging myself, now I make bad decisions. Now I don't follow my process. And so seeking to better see when I do that, and exploring ways of just realizing that's part of homeostasis. It's been a part of my life for a long time. My whole system operates and is judging. Now, how do I shift that from being judging to being curious, which was my word from 2 weeks ago. How to be curious about what's happening, accept that it's happening, and view it as an opportunity to assess and then learn. What I discovered on Friday was I got into self-judging mode out of my first trade, where I gave back more than I wanted to, albeit less than a 1 hour loss. And I went into self-judgment because it was more than my average loss. And I got into my head that, well, I want to do better than my average loss, and I didn't. So the self-judging kicked in. And I started into that cycle. And then that set me off. And I ended up the day with a minus 0.45 loss. So in the scheme of things, that a normal outcome within the realm of my system and my process. And I was still in self-judging mode to the point that I hadn't even gone back to assess bar by bar, did I trade that first trade well, or did I not? So it's that fascinating interconnection of when my body, brain go into this self-talk mode, that can take me out of the zero state where I want to be. And so then the opportunity, as I reflected on this, was, oh, okay, well, if I assume each trade's going to fail, as Ken describes, he already feels that 1 hour loss when he goes in. If I'm assuming it's going to fail, what am I setting as my limits for where I want to exit? And how am I doing that consistently? And how am I studying that from a systemic view? Both my emotional, did I go into self-talk, judgment, or did I stay in the zero state? Or how quickly, when I go into self-talk, how quickly do I come back to a zero state? Because I expect that I will always get knocked off balance. It's how quickly I come back that will make the difference.
Jeff.
All right, hey guys. Okay, so I really enjoyed the ideas behind this particular lesson. I've enjoyed most of them, but this one in particular, and I was trying to think about why that is, and I think it's because I've been through some of the exercises sort of already, and I can sort of relate to them. By the way, it's just I'm distracted myself by the Christmas decorations we put up, which look way better in person than they do on the on the screen here. So yeah, I thought that would be cool, but it's a bit stroby. Anyway, okay, so a couple of things that kind of really stuck out to me on this exercise, and that was kind of going through it, and there was one particular line, as there often is, and I didn't see it the first time around. I think I saw it on the second or third read. And it's all about sort of like the idea that you know, we're exploring this idea of creativity being pointless without innovation. And you know, we could skip over the uncertainty bit and the inefficiency and jump right to the breakthrough, right? That was the sort of idea. But then unfortunately we can't. There's no way of knowing in advance whether something new will work. The new is by its very nature uncertain. That's what makes it different from logic's tried and true rules. And here's the line that I really kind of stuck out to me. That's why it should be ventured only when those rules aren't working. Which I missed the first and possibly the second time around, which to me is a shortcut to, if it ain't broke, you know, don't fix it. So if logic is working, carry on as usual. And then when logic perhaps isn't working, or whatever you've been doing before isn't working, that's the opportunity for creativity. But knowing when to apply that can be a different sort of art. So that can come down to different sort of rules as to like knowing when, like, how do you know when it's broke, right? And I'm thinking about this from trading systems points of view, and there are ways that we look and measure that sort of thing. But you know, anyway, that one really kind of stuck out to me. And then there was this whole idea of I'm going to try to say this succinctly. There were a couple scenarios through the lesson, right? And I'm thinking about this with my systems building head, as I often do. And you know, it comes down to having a ultimately what we're talking about here is failing and failing fast, right? And all the things that are right at the bottom that Ken put in there, right? Fail fast, fail often, fail forward, fail by design, fail in order to learn. And now I've been on both sides of this coin. I've been on the side of you know, having a creative idea and really pushing it. And Ken's a bit familiar with this. You know, just pushing it, like really just trying to find a way to make it just that little bit better. But just kind of like beating it to death, right? Whereas, and also kind of being aware, but sometimes external factors get in the way, and kind of being aware that, geez, is this the most, or the best use of time and resource, or has it turned into a boondoggle, right? Which is one of those words in there, which I quite like. I did have to look up the meaning just to make sure I was getting it right. And then even after that, if you guys haven't looked up the meaning, it's worthwhile. But to make sure it's not something that is just going to get in the way of progress, or of if doing something else might unlock those other creative efforts. So from a systems point of view, I've been down the path of like probably just like going a bit too far and trying to do small tweaks and improvements, and then trying a lot of different ideas. And then I've also been down the other path, and that's partially because of Sunil, you know, who has challenged me in the past to do almost like the polar opposite. And so I pulled up some notes that I had here from that sort of opposite idea. And so the idea here was to get 10 trading systems built and tested, run through sort of like our process, which is ultimately the creativity process we're talking about here, but also run through like a repeatable process to do some testing to figure out what the results are looking like. So basically the goal was to have 10 trading systems built and tested within 48 hours. And so I took on the challenge, and I wrote down a brainstorm of about 20 or 30 different systems, and all kinds of different stuff, right? There's some of them are intraday, there's different markets, there's daily swing stuff we've looked at before, brand new stuff, other ideas. Kind of tried to rank some of them for what would be, you know, what was the least effort, biggest impact, or most likely to produce something out of it. And yeah, just to run it through that process. But so the idea here was very similar to the exercise, right? Which is just run through these things really quick and expect it not to work, and then don't get attached to the outcome of these things, right? Like don't all we want to do is run it, you know, run it through the factory and then get the little report sheet coming off of the end to say, okay, these are the numbers that kind of came out, and then what do we think about that? And sort of expecting them not to work, but then, you know, possibly something quite good could come out of that, and then possibly a little tweak on something, which is mentioned in the exercise as well. Something like that can crop up as well. So if it's borderline on the threshold, I think that's how it was put in the lesson, then, you know, focusing on that a little bit more to see if there's any juice there, and then sort of trying to move on. And that was a really interesting exercise, and I'd almost forgotten about it. And did we do 10 in the end? I think we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7. So we got pretty far, which is pretty good work, you know, if you think about it. And also, you know, you can kind of get in the mode of doing it. So in the mode of just sort of like, I don't know, like doing anything, I guess, right? But you kind of get more in the flow of going through, you know, the building and then the ideas, and then trying to get the next idea down, and then wait, no, let's not get distracted off that. That can be another test for another time. Let me just see if I can crank this one out. But, you know, I built the whole process around that. And so how can we rapidly sort of prototype and test, you know, all of these results? Is like in sample element, there's an out of sample element. It's going to give us a result, and the out of sample one's the one we care about, right? So it was kind of like all of that. And and that in a way is more fulfilling. Now we did it probably really fast, and possibly too fast. There's probably an in-between zone where, you know, you want to get it to fail fast, but then you also don't want to miss something, like if there's like a little bit of something there, you just didn't pay it quite enough attention. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to bring that up because it made me reflect that I've been through both elements of, or both extremes, I suppose, of what I think the crux of the lesson was there. It did bring up a thought or a question, which I don't know if there's an answer to. And let me see if I can find the right sort of section here. Was it in the exercise? Do you remember?
No, it's further up. Keep going.
Is it this one? Well, I'll tell you what the actual sort of like the point of it anyway. When you expect, you know, we're sort of designing for failure, right? And when you design for failure, I think it might be in the exercise. Yeah, so the exercise, I'm sorry guys, I'm rambling a little bit here today, but exercise 1, identify a problem that calls for a creative solution. Write down the first solution that springs to mind. Now think about this from a trading systems point of view, right? So I've got there's a problem, the creative solution is I want to design a system that's going to pull some money out of the market. Write down the first solution that comes to mind. Okay, got that one. Then tell yourself mentally the solution's failed. Now write down the second one. So we're moving through the list here, all right? And then repeat it until you feel your confidence shifting from an individual ideas onto the overall process, right? And so my thinking on here, or my question is, how do you prevent yourself from developing a negative attitude to constantly losing mentally, right? So if you're designing to fail and you're constantly thinking that, oh yes, this is going to fail, then, because I found myself in this loop before, so this is why I'm kind of bringing this up too. Like you almost become jaded with the process, and then I don't know if you build confidence with the process, because all the process is proving is that everything's failing. And then if by looking like close enough, like if I really test these things hard enough, I could probably get everything to fail. So there's a point there where you need to find that sort of like that little glimmer, like that little piece of innovation, which is really what we're digging for, right? It's like that, you're digging for gold, or you're in the mine and you get that little glimmer of something. So I think balancing those two things in a way is important, so you don't end up too far down the hole and you stop before you kind of get there, just because of your, like, it could affect your overall attitude towards the task, right? So anyway, that was just something that that kind of came up for me. I wanted to touch on two things quickly that you guys have said. Ernie, who's already dropped off, but he mentioned innovation by mistakes, and I've found that quite a few times just through doing trading system development work, where I'll make a coding error and it will result in a good outcome, like a good performance outcome, even though it's not doing what I had originally intended. And that's kind of cool. You get to add it sort of to the list of things. It's like, oh, wait, I made a problem. Like I made an error there, and that's no good. But actually the performance was really good. So now I get to go and explore that little idea a bit more. So I quite like that. And I thank Ernie for bringing that up. Keon, you'd said, actually, this is just a, excuse me, that was just a suggestion. Thank you for sharing your trades and your experience. I think we've all been through similar things before. One idea that struck me that I wanted to get out before I forgot, was that, if you, as part of your process of your reflective process, what you could do is go through old trades in like market replay mode on something like TradingView. Remember that TradingView's got that little market replay thing? And what I would suggest you could do is don't do it like the same day, because you'll remember what happened and the outcome, but go back to like a day from like a week ago, or some whatever's long enough ago so you forget. And then if you're monitoring and journaling this sort of thing, then today is whatever, let's say today's Monday, well, go back to last Monday and pick a trade or pick a market or something, and then just roll through that one again. And you can do it quite quickly with market replay, but then you're kind of fooling yourself a little bit. So even though you know the outcome, you may have forgotten the outcome, and now you can run through it again separately and see if anything has changed from your outcome. So just a throwaway thought there. And Tom, you brought up quite a few things there that were really interesting. And you mentioned the that larger than 1 hour loss that sort of affected you. I think it was on Friday, but I'm sorry, the larger than average loss, but smaller than 1 hour loss still, right? And there's two parts of this that I found really interesting, that I thought was worth reinforcing. So, one of them is you're going to go in assuming, that there's a 1 hour loss all the time. And this is right to the point of the exercise here, where you're sort of, you're expecting failure, or you're sort of almost designing to fail. And so if the expectation is a 1 hour loss, then you're always going to be happy, probably. I mean, you might take the 1 hour loss and be like, yeah, see, that's what I said, 1 hour loss. But if it's anything better than a 1 hour loss, then you're doing okay. But if your expectation is that it's going to be an average loss, now it's no longer a 1 hour loss, it's an average loss. And remember that in order for it to be an average loss, there have to be larger than average losses, right? Just to create the average. So that was all that sort of, that came to me on that one. Just, they're not all going to be smaller than 1 hour losses. Otherwise your average will be declining, which is great, but there's got to be some bigger ones. Otherwise it's not an average. So just to go easy on yourself there. I think that's pretty much all I had, guys. Thanks for dealing with me. Aho.
Chunlong.
Okay, so I don't know how I'm going to start or carry on this, so I'm going to put my thinking cap on.
Straight over the eyes.
If you can take that seriously, and I'll take it up again. All right, so my question, I've got quite a few thoughts, really not organized at all. So my first question is, where was this lesson 20 years ago? Seriously, it's cutting a little bit too close to the truth. And so in true happy clappy optimistic style, I will raise the vibe. But no, I mean, you guys know that we're all in, right? So you know that we've been doing this for 20 years. So when we talk about being fully associated with systems and whatever, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you're in a job that's paying well, why leave? You know, hello, the world of trading. So where was this lesson 20 years ago? Lots and lots of things come up for me. So when we think about a creative person and an innovative person, what comes to mind? Do you see an inspired, happy soul sitting on the clouds with a harp strumming? Or do you see somebody borderline bipolar, depressed, with creative spurts of inspiration, but a lack of inability sometimes to express it, manifest it, deal with the failures, have a graveyard of like tools, ideas, whatever, trading footprint? You know, there's the reality, because I'm really good at talking about reality. So when I think about this creative process and innovation, you know, Ken, there's a couple of things that, you know, two things that come to mind. So we spoke at the end of last year, and Jeff just touched on that accelerated factory process, for want of a better phrase, of getting ideas through. And that was a way of trying to develop you know, we talk about positive expectancy. We always talk about that in systems, but we don't talk about that in terms of attitude and in terms of, it doesn't mean that we're duping ourselves or being delusional about the work that we're doing. But if we believe that everything we do will inevitably fail, it takes away, well, A, the joy, and B, the reason behind and the purpose of why we do what we do. Hence, shifting from an idea and parameters around an idea and then moving it out into process, which is one of the reasons we went, okay, we spent a lot of time on this one thing. There's this one system that's a really good system, but it's taking a lot out of us. So why don't we just, you know, shelve that for a minute, take the others, run them through the process and expect them all to be naff, but just do it and get some momentum back. And that's what you were touching on there, right? And
it worked. We came out with good systems in the end. So
yeah, and it worked. And guess what? Guess who hasn't put those systems into production? Right, but I'm just saying, because we're still up there dusting the thing that, you know, we really jointly want to work. Second thing that came to mind, I ought not to mention names, but I am going to mention a name because this person was super inspiring. So Ken, there's a guy called Jacek. You remember him? You produced the OWL. You developed the OWL system. And Jacek was one of the students in the tortoise community who adopted, of all of the different systems and strategies and techniques, he adopted the OWL. He thought, this is my one-trick pony. So this guy went and he traded the OWL on a range of different assets, well, stocks mainly, right? And he was amongst the first of our group that would collate his results and then share them in the room in, you know, this what is now the standard tortoise style. And he had a solid footprint. I mean, it was just an amazing, we'd say amazing, but Ken would say it's not amazing, it's professional, expected outcome if you do the thing, right? But it was an amazing, positive expectancy system demonstrated, forward, testing, live, so on and so forth. This guy, whatever he did, there was never a massive outlying win. There was never a massive outlying loser. He just went in every day disbelieving that this is going to work, but it, you know, humble, lovely individual. And here's the thing. When we talked to him separately, he did not believe his system would work for him. He kept looking for it to fail. He kept saying, so this is on a Kansas research, you know, when we would peer review each other's papers. He would write to us and say, look, I really need to find the environment within which this system will not work. We're like, yeah, okay, we hear you. But what you've done is you've actually identified a market condition where the system does work. So we'll take a little bit of good here, and you have a footprint. You've actually done it. You're demonstrating it. People are learning from you. But yeah, you know, not rose-tinted glasses. There will be somewhere, somehow, this system won't work. But he suffered from, can you hear what I'm about to say? He suffered from an engineering mindset. Actually, an engineering mindset is a gift, but the curse is I have the ability to really test a robust system, but I need to prove that it's robust. So what can I do to make sure that I really trust the results that I'm producing? So there were like some things that I noticed, and I don't know, I mean, Jacek, he was actually working full time. He has a family and everything as well. So I'm not sure where he is with that, but, you know, hats off to him. Outstanding individual in my mind. Process. So attitude, yeah. So the next thing I think about is something I think about. So here we talk about you have a process, you don't want to be attached to the idea or the innovation, and you want to test it as quickly as you can. So in my world, because I'm not a programmer or like gifted technically, how can somebody who is a manual trader or somebody who doesn't have a system like an automated robot out there to test her ideas, how can I test my ideas quickly? And so this goes to accelerated learning and really aggressive learning, which is why I talked about the 10-second charts, because I would take the pattern or the patterns that I wanted to trade. I would take, I would define the conditions within which I thought those specific setups might work. I would have skin in the game, but make it really small because, come on, it's 10 seconds, who are we kidding? And then accelerated aggressive learning, repeat. So see the pattern, take the trade, manage the trade, exit, reset, control, go, go, go. How many times can you do that before you need to stop? Before you can prove that this idea doesn't work or it does work. And then I think about, you know, the flashcard that Ken shared, and each one of those players, each one of those statements inside of the circles around, is it up, down, sideways? Is it fear? Is it greed? Is it something else? Confusion? Each one of those is ultimately a system which has a process, and in my mind, a stereotype, an individual. So now you see when we talk about owl, I think of Jacek. Each one has a person that plays out. And I, you know, I've kind of gone off the track on that a little bit, but I'm going to come back to Tom. And you talked about curiosity. And I still remember your word from a couple of weeks ago, so I've really reflected on it. And curiosity is the thing that I've tried to kind of invoke when I find myself having a block on. It doesn't even have to be trading and self-judgment. So if I'm finding I'm resisting, like somebody's teaching me a lesson, or if I'm reacting internally, I'm trying to invoke curiosity to open my mind to just put aside whatever the heck is coming up so I can just hear what I need to hear. And so, you know, I just remember that, so I had to come back to that. Death by 1,000 cuts. So one thing I've never done, I thought was stand out in this lesson, was the phrase, what was it? I'm going to find it, so I don't ad lib it. Is it at the bottom? It's about designing to fail. Like, can you see it? It's basically, the idea is you can have a test, you can have a process, you can put your ideas through the process, but what you're doing to be creative is asking yourself, how can I make this fail? And how can I make this fail magnificently? And, you know,
Crash was the word.
How can this crash? And that's something I've never entertained, because I think about the psychological, you know, teachings of, if you're driving a race car, you're not going to look at the wall. You're not going to say, look at the wall, look at the wall, look at the wall. In the same way, I'm not going to, and I haven't thought, how could this crash? How could this crash? How could this crash? What can I do to make this crash fast? So the corollary to that is a death by 1,000 cuts. Creeping death, or what was the other phrase one of you guys used? Well, I've used it in the past, fractional loss, like death by fractional loss. So I see the value now of designing or imagining what a crash could look like. And, you know, just on the train today, we were talking about it, and I was like, I run these scenarios in my mind a lot. We talk about creative brainstorming. And one of the ideas I had was, what if I lived differently? So obviously I don't, you know, I don't drink, I don't eat meat, I don't smoke. Does that mean that's a healthy life? What if I decided in 2023, screw it, have the drink, have the steak, go over to Kansas and have that Kansas steak, have a smoke, get some hallucinogens? Would that mean that my body would fall over and I wouldn't live to 2023 January the 3rd because I've accelerated and crashed? I don't know. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. I love the paradoxes. So yeah, we talk about these things a lot. Things I wanted to mention to you guys, not necessarily linked to this. Chunlong, thank you for the outstanding video. Thank you. I will be listening to it again. Ken, love your recent piece of work on that executive summary. That I couldn't find the words to express how emphatically you described everything you do and everything you presented in that executive summary. So that was just brilliant. Heart rate. I want to talk about heart rate. So I'm going to attribute everything to creativity this year. So this Thursday, I'm not even trading. Well, I was trading in the morning, and I was about to do my meditation before the US session on Thursday. And I had my over-ear headphones on, and my heart rate shot up, and I could hear the pulsing in my ears. And I'm like, holy shit, what's going on? Why is something's different here? I'm not trading. I'm not invested in a trade. I'm not observing the markets, really. I know that things are going on, and I have whatever. It's a normal situation. And I looked at my Fitbit, which said I wasn't I wasn't particularly being a Fitbit at the time. It was my heart rate. My resting heart rate was 98 beats per minute. Resting heart rate. This is a girl who's not trading. She's about to meditate. So I told Jeff, and I dropped a note to Eric, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but my heart rate went up. And here's my thing. I felt that my body was telling me what was about to unfold over the next 2 days. So Ken gets his itchy palm thing. I'm often, I wouldn't say anxious, but I can feel something is going to happen, whether it's going to be me crashing and wrecking an account or misbehaving, or there's a a market conditional shift that is beyond the normal intraday. So if you're on the wrong side, you know about it. But I wasn't actually trading. This is about to go into meditation. So heart rate. Interestingly, during that Argentina final, Jeff's heart rate was up. He's got a really healthy heart rate, healthy resting heart rate, and his heart rate was up. We noticed the referee's assistant on the Argentinian side checking his pulse just on the sidelines. And so the attribution to the creativity is the awareness that my body, I was awake enough to sense something, some signal in my body, and I couldn't work out what it was. And with hindsight, Captain Hindsight, I think it might be because we had that big shift from Thursday afternoon onwards. Talking about body, the question I have is, these footballers, with the injuries that they encounter on the pitch, like the number of headbutts and kicks and punches to the rib, how do they get up and recover and run for the next 90 minutes? I genuinely don't know how they can recover so quickly. And at one point, I think when Messi collided with someone and he kept checking his ear, my fascination then became the color of his ear. One ear was bright red, it was a tomato, and the other one was pale. And it was like that for a long time. And I'm like, how do you recover so fast? So these different, very different thoughts, but I'm emptying the bowl. So. Last chance before Christmas. I'm sure there was quite a bit more. Yeah, I will leave it. I'll respect your time. So thank you. Aho.
Sound. Sound, okay.
Okay, so for this one, you're going to need a pencil and paper, because you're going to make a sketch. You're going to draw a line, a couple lines. All right, so what I want you to do is take a look at that little image that's on my screen right there, the max range, max pain range compression. So the idea behind that is there's an enormous amount of energy that's baked into the doji as a consequence of price racing from the top of the hill all the way down to the bottom. And then it compresses into that doji, and then it's going to cross that blue line, the line of departure. And then if it stays within the doji, it's in the yellow zone. I don't have a directional view of it. But if it goes left, green, that's good. Red to the right, that's bad unless I'm short. So it's just going to make some kind of directional move that stops the doji. It's out of the doji's channel, if you will. All right. So now I want you to hold that thought. What I want you to hold the thought is, where does the energy for everything after that blue line come from? It's supercharged by the size of that doji. So, or the by the supercharged by the size of the max pain. So you know that it is in play at least to that level of energy, that it moved price that far. Work was performed. All right. Now I want you to think about a bicycle. By any definition, a bicycle is a system. It's a pretty good system. It's robust, it's reliable, it's purposeful, it's functional. You could describe it, it's reliable. Now, the thing about a bicycle is that it is inherently unstable, right? So if you just try to just set a bicycle on the ground and then take your hands off it, it's probably going to fall over because it is really, really optimized to be stable when it's moving. In fact, the faster that you push a bicycle, the more stable it is. Like if you want to ride hands free, it's easier if you're going faster because it is the extra energy is making it be the best bicycle it can, and the wind that's passing on either side of it actually keeps it stable because it's symmetrical along the long axis of the bicycle. So the faster the bicycle goes, the more stable it is. And then if you stop pedaling and it starts slowing down, it starts to wobble, and then it will fail, and then it will fall. So now what I want you to imagine is we have a test track, and we place a bicycle on the top of that big red candle, and we have a little channel within which the wheels are going to run. So this thing is going to go screaming down the hill, picking up energy, hits the flat land into the doji, and it's in that channel of controlled pathway. It's already done. It cannot vary its path from the left-hand side of the vertical blue line. So it has a certain amount of energy, and when it crosses that blue line, the straps come off, and now it is free-range chicken. It is a free-range bicycle. Now, on your paper, I want you to put a little dot where the bicycle receives its freedom from the doji. It crosses that blue line, and in your mind, I want you to imagine one use case of what that bicycle does. Draw the path of what you think that bicycle might do until the moment that it falls. And when it falls, put a little dot. And then take a look at the path that you drew and imagine feeling what it felt like to be the bicycle and all the forces on it as it began to slow down, and friction and wind and lack of energy and then wobbling and then crash. When you have finished drawing that line, give me a thumbs up. You should be just about done with that line just about now. Now, that's trade number one. Pick up your bicycle, dust it off, clean it up, make it as close to the first bicycle as you could, or if you want to be perfect, you now have 1,000 bicycles that are as identical as Japanese manufacturing can make them, and they come out of the factory shrink wrap, and they're at the top of the hill, and now they're gonna now take the second one, run it down and out through the doji, now draw another path, bearing in mind that the first path has no impact on the second path because the bicycle has no memory, or if you will, each subsequent bicycle is born with no memory, and off it goes. Now imagine you did that 1,000 times. I want you to sketch intuitively, impressionistically, something like the shape of 1,000 bicycle paths released under controlled conditions. You have like 5 seconds to do that. So while you're doing that, I'm going to go back to what Jeff said about, you know, the keep the searching for that perfect system. In your mind, what you're trying to do, I think, change my mind, is you think that you can actually design a bicycle that's just going to keep going. Aha! I finally got that bicycle. Whereas all of the bicycles you've ever seen have a certain path and then if you did 1,000, it has a certain shape, and that's what that bicycle design was. It had a life cycle, it had an expectancy, yeah, and all that stuff. So just keep in mind. Let's see. Let me know when you can. Oops. Let me hold on. Let's see. We're going to go with that screen. Let me know when you can see that screen. Can you see that screen? So that is the picture of a pathway of, I think it was 800, but we're going to call it 1,000. That's the pathway of 1,000 bicycles that were released from controlled conditions. Fascinating. That's not a random distribution like popcorn popping from it. No, it actually, you can actually see waves and patterns and themes and certain symmetries. Now, the bicycle did not change from path to path. What accounts for the variety of bicycle performance? The ecosystem. It wasn't the rider. It was subtle market conditions. Now, make a list of 1 to 1,000 of all the variables that are in there affecting the pathway of the bicycle. Yeah, and there's more than that. So there's all that. The ecosystem and the starting condition of the test will tell you the boundary there is some moment in there when this thing moves from order to the edge of chaos. It's always being operated on by the laws of physics, but that's what chaos predicts. That when you have that many variables, even though they are all operating under the current laws of physics as we know them, the combinations are so astronomically large that you get variation that looks like that. And the search for the perfect bicycle, what you're really doing is that you're neglecting, I think, the characteristics of the actual path of actual bicycles and learning from them in the search for the holy grail of that perfect design that you want to hold out for. Hey, so imagine if you did something like this. If you thought about that just as a trader and you said, what I'm going to do is when I release that bicycle from the doji, maybe there's some kind of, let's see, let me see if I can draw this right. Somewhere out about here, that thing mostly stays in the doji. And as soon as you draw the size of the blue box limit that you want, which I'm going to call the minimum manageable risk box in either direction, that every departure from crossing the blue line, there's more volume outside of the blue box than in the blue box. It has reliably departed from the controlled box of the doji of the starting conditions. It has become directional, and then it becomes more directional. What's not shown on here, imagine what I would want to do if I was running that simulation is color code the ones that departed the box on one direction and then came back and crossed the red line, the horizontal red line, and finished on the other side. I bet you there's fewer of them than depart the box and then finish on that side of the box. That's nothing more than the Z3 pinch or the super pinch, all driven by the size of the mountain that this thing came rolling down and the energy that it contained as it crossed the line. So why do you want to find something that is already in play? Because it gives you that kind of splatter pattern of energy being transferred into the ground through the connection of the tires rolling. The interface between the bike and the ecosystem is the path that is traced on the surface. That is the transfer of energy from the bike to the world, which is receiving that energy back, which it gave to it in the beginning in the form of the mountain, which was all our hopes and dreams, and it was the size of the previous move or whatever. So that's why you want to find things that are in play. That is an awesome thing to consider right there, by the way. You're not going to hear that anywhere else. But that's gold, what I just said, I think. So at the Quantum Storytelling 12th Annual Conference, I ran an hour-long True Storytelling Circle where I did for them what we do together here for the last 30 weeks. And I said, the ability to create a mindful moment is really hard, but rewarding. And I was telling that to a room full of global academic experts in the art and science of storytelling. Do you know how hard it is to make storytellers just shut up and listen? It's hard, but they listened to me. And what I told them was, I said, we're gonna experience a mindful moment here through storytelling, and I want you guys all to think about the word that best describes your experience of the first 3 days of this amazing quantum storytelling experience. And there were many, many moving and interesting presentations. I said, whatever word comes to your mind as you think about it, to capture that, I want you to hold that word right in front of you and then think about an experience outside of this workshop, this conference, from your personal lived experience that beautifully captures the emotional intensity you feel about the word that you just used to describe this conference. So another personal story, but outside of the direct experience. So they're going to end up having two experiences. One was the Quantum Storytelling Conference reminded them of a word, and then they found that word embodied in another emotionally compelling story from their life. Check or hold. So that's what I asked them to do. And then I said, what we're going to do is, in a minute, we're going to ring these chimes, and then we're going to take turns with the talking stick, and tell your 1 minute story of personal emotional connection to this story. And here's what the rest of us are going to do. We're just going to shut up, and we're going to engage in deep listening, and we're not going to judge, critique, advise, revise, recommend, process, direct, suggest, illuminate. And all we're going to do is shut up and listen and feel how that word and that story go all the way down to our feet and back up and resonate with deep memories that we have that we're not going to talk about. We're just going to notice them and remember them for reflection later on. But we're just going to sit in the silence and the truth of your stories and appreciate that. And when you're done telling your story, you're going to say, ah-ho, and I'm going to hit these little beautiful gong tones, and we're going to give that story 10 seconds of a head start to get its feet and go running out into the universe, who is only trying to listen to true stories. And then we're going to move on to the next story. And when we're done telling stories, we're just going to ring that bell again. And then we'll be in the foyer and we can talk about whatever we want. But for a moment, can we just let the story be for once? without processing it and with no other purpose other than just to be the story that was told? Can we just do that? If we can, then we will have created a mindful moment in the center of that diagram, that little story that comes out of that little pink heart and creates a moment of space. And the reason that's important and the reason that it's hard to do is this. It's important because that's the only moment where you can make a difference and make a change, by the way. And the reason it's so hard is because of the problem of the past and the future. The problem of the past is there's just so much of it. And all of it's important, and everybody wants to tell you about it and why you need to know this before you can do that. Oh, but first, just one more thing. There's so much of the past that should be attended to. I mean, it doesn't mean nothing, or does it? It means something, apparently, because we're always talking about it. Oh, and the other problem is the future. And the problem with the future also is that there's just so much of it. Like every thought you had about what the future might be, could be, should be, will be, multiplied by every moment when you change your mind, times all the minds that have ever lived and are ever talking about things that are important, all of that is trying to fit into this moment to get your attention. So each of those things is like this huge red waves from the past coming forward, from the future coming back, all trying to crush that little person inside of you who's just trying to figure out what to do next with a moment of peace. Well, when you make that mindful moment and you send that little blue line down into the ground of virtues and values and intentions and your grounded reality, that's a source of strength. And then your visions and hopes and dreams and values in the high heavens of the sky remind you of what you're hoping it could be, and that's a source of strength. And from that groundedness and heavenly glory, you're pulling the energy that is in there to remind you that what you're doing in the mindful moment matters the most, and that you can create that moment that lives inside the past, present, and future as part of a continuum, but is also its own little thing, its own little space within which you can make some changes up in this thing. So that was the setup that I gave them. And then we did the True Story Circle, as you guys have become accustomed to. And within 15 minutes, there were 10 people crying their eyes out because of the stories that had come up and had been shared, and the moments of reality, and the fact that nobody was helping them understand it or fix it or improve it or shape it. They were just sitting there in the presence of truth and just letting that be for a while. And that was pretty good, which we know because we've been sort of doing that. Well, I use that simply to say the other things that I was telling them about was our experience on the right-hand side of the phenomenon of the True Story Circle, the safety, trust, and truth, the exchange of stories in sacred spaces that leads to opportunities out in the world after you depart the circle, when that story has had a chance just to be what it is, and off it goes, and then you kind of collect yourself and then move on to the next sorts of things that must be done in order to get on with it. But it's always connected to the memory that you created inside that sacred story space, which is an artifact and which happened. No matter what else happens in the future, that happened. And that gives you a sense of continuity and strength going forward. To Chunlong's comments about the process of innovation, this was the story that I told them from our 3 years of doing this stuff, was that the three-headed monster of transformation, if you will. First is that Fletcher creativity technique, which we're learning, the experiential learning of these little different moments and exercises and whatever, generates this individual energy of insight from a new space that simply taps into the evolutionary's brain desire to find something new. 10 million years of evolution have gone into creating a brain and sensory organs and sense-making system that seeks for novelty, not just to exploit an opportunity, but to find changes in the environment, because most of the time that'll kill you. Like your visual cortex developed to detect the difference between light and dark, because when you're just observing with your primitive eyeball the ecosystem and suddenly a shadow comes in, that's always bad. Well, most of the time it's bad, because that's something that is now coming towards you, and most of the time because it wants to eat you until proven otherwise. So detecting the difference in shading of lights is a survival instinct that's coded into your brain. And as you widen your peripheral vision, now the ability to detect motion on a static backdrop allows you to, tells you, there's something different. So we are geared to see differences. And the smallest difference that we can detect is the earliest opportunity to discover what is changing in the environment in order for us to do something. You decide, or your brain will decide, fight or flight based on all the other millions of variables that are going on. And because we're at the top of the food chain, apparently our brains are designed to do that. And because we can imagine future circumstances and visualize other outcomes and have a limited amount of delayed gratification and opposable thumbs and a social organization that allows us to communicate to overcome our individual physical weaknesses, because we are a weak animal as a species, but we have the ability to have strong social bonds that reward collaboration more than competition. But with some competition, it's called co-opetition, as a blend of cooperation and competition. So we have this ability to create tribes of practice that can communicate and distribute good ideas that work, and multiply our ability to sense and respond what is working in the universe as we try to design bicycles that will resist the forces of chaos that make them crash, so that they can perform on that curve better, and then add a human for the motive power, knowing that they will add some variation to how the bike performs. So how you ride the bike now has something to do with the performance path of the bike. Like, you got to learn how to hold your elbows in when you're riding for hours in order to reduce your aerodynamic profile. That makes a difference. Learning how to keep your knees and legs in a certain plane reduces your aerodynamic signature. That promotes speed in the bike and makes you more stable when you go faster. The thinner your tires, the faster it goes, but the more quickly you lose the balance point when you go off the critical path, which is why bicycles fail eventually. So the left-hand side there, Chunlong, is what happens when you bring together pure Fletcher creativity on the left side on a scale of 1 to 7 of increasing novelty, and then the ability to bring that to market in a way that adds value practically, reliably, professionally, routinely, with lots of opportunity. That's feasibility and acceptability. Feasibility is the cost efficiency of bringing it to market, and acceptability reflects two different value judgments. One of them is, can I trade or perform this system in such a way that it does not violate my sense of ethics and integrity and human values, honor, duty, service, and my acceptability of certain levels of risk, knowing what the risk profile of all the different outcomes look like. Can I perform this system in a way that is making that risk profile acceptable, either If it's an positive expectancy, then I have to lower the amount of risk per iteration in order to get more iterations so that I never experience catastrophic loss when I get the worst possible controlled outcome. And then there's some optimum level of risk I can trade. Oh yeah, we know the Fortune's formula. There's some optimum mathematical level of risk that I can trade it at to maximize the output of that system within the acceptable limits of risk that is connected to acceptability. So when you blend those two drivers together, the combination of Fletcher creativity and trader's knowledge, which is what we're trying to master, the third head of this three-headed monster of transformational learning is the true storytelling circle that allows us to do the collaborative learning and fire together on all cylinders and contribute to our collective success because of the shared trust, truth, and safety that we have, which leads to opportunity. So no matter what it is that you're trying to learn, if you bring together Fletcher creativity for individual novelty and enthusiasm and energy and insight, plus the true storytelling circle of collaborative, trusted, truthful, safe learning, plus the third head, which is any content that you want to master, what I found is it works with, soccer knowledge, trader's knowledge, soldier knowledge, leadership knowledge, anything that you put into there as the technical component of what it is that you're trying to learn. If you add to that effort of learning the combination of individual Fletcher treatment for creativity plus the true storytelling circle for collaborative learning, you have a recipe for accelerated learning that is impossible to stop. The return on effort, I want you to map the R multiple of accelerated collaborative learning that features Fletcher's nitroglycerin fuel plus true storytelling rapid determination of efficacy and applicability and opportunity, plus just grounded in rock solid trader's knowledge. Every iteration that you go through, every venture that you take each week to learn, documented in your learning journal, is an R multiple of learning. Hey, you tried this on and studied this and you got that kind of result. And what was the maximum amount of learning that you could get out of performing the reflection of the plan, prepare, execute, and assess? That's not just for trading, my friends. That is the model for accelerated learning. I'm planning to learn, I prepare to learn, I execute the learning plan of drawing the line on the piece of paper like Ken told me to do to experience the single path of a free bicycle over ground, and then connecting that to the larger insight. And then you're going to reflect on this when you take a look at that little picture again and what it all means, and then you're going to cycle through that on your own individual hamster wheel and generate all kinds of insights that you're going to document in your learning journal, the same way that you document the learned lessons from each trading case study, and you talk about it. Like, you don't say, well, I'm kind of embarrassed to show this. No, you're not. Well, maybe you are, but that's the energy of learning and courage that generates collaborative learning in a safe and trusted culture of learning. So, Chunlong Lee, that is the diagram of the innovation process that you're going to draw for you that allows you to go from the aha moment of insight to the reflective considerations in column 2 to the experimental test in column 3 to the discovery of the results and reflection upon it in column 4. That's the 4-part learning journal that we talk about. And it goes onto your master task list for other things to follow up on, and you get to them in some kind of prioritized list that you decide upon. It's never ending. Then and only then are you preparing to learn by quickly pushing to the boundaries of what the lesson contains, in the same way that you launch a bicycle of experimentation and follow its path and then document it and add it to the list of other paths that you've traced. And then you learn something about the bicycle and its pathways through time and space. And then you can learn something from it. And then you realize, oh yeah, that's the bicycle is the metaphor for just another mechanical trading system following the rules. You have to accumulate enough N to be able to say anything sensible about the performance of the system without changing the variable of the human driver on it each and every time. It's always a pathway of one. And you can't learn anything systematic about an N of one. You can only describe it and what it felt like to be on it. But you can't do anything systematic with it. You can learn something about the sense maker that's riding the bicycle that's trying to infer systematic information with a bunch of independent experiments with an N of one. That tells you a lot about the person trying to conduct experiments that way. More than what the system is, you're learning something about the person that cannot recreate conditions in an experimental control group. So be who you are. But also reflect that one of the things that you can do is use bicycles as leverage for your insights and let the bicycle do the work in the same way that you let the trading system rules do the work up until the point where you've got to make some decisions at the risk boundary about how much more risk to lock in or to take or how many gains to take. That's where you're getting paid to make judgments in a pretty good mechanical system, is when to start moving open risk to your side of the ledger and what's the window in which you're going to allow that bicycle and rider to continue to wobble. And just remember, you're training a monkey to ride a bicycle. They can be trained to do that, but they're always going to be a monkey on a bicycle, and you got to protect that monkey from falling off the bicycle, and that's you taking care of the vulnerable, naive, trusting monkey who just wants to please you and to do well to get a banana. So as you start thinking about all the members of your team and who's on the team and the roles that they play, take a look at that little flashcard that was added in there and those guys that are on the bottom of the team, the chief of staff, the designer, the architect, the framer, the trader, the fireman, the assistant manager, the sniper, the accountant, the scientist, all of those members of the team all doing their part to make a difference between your performance and that of a random number generator. I take the position that we are not random number generators, but that we can do something with skill that makes a difference in the performance of systems. And that thing that we can do is tradable, trainable, learnable, and provides a persistent professional edge. And so that's my hypothesis. So that's what I wanted to say on my little story for my week in progress. Aho. Let's try that again. Okay, so think of your word. As I hit them one more time, and we'll do our thing. Tom Hardison.
Observe.
Sonal.
Playmaker.
Jeffrey,
Boondoggle.
Chunlong,
Process.
Kyun.
Nothing is floating up like now because I'm so tired, but the word has got to be goat.
I agree. Sort of, we saw it today. We
Yeah.
saw the goat,
Yeah.
formerly his sense of relief.
Yeah.
That was my word, was finally. Finally. Leo Messi.
That's it.
And I'm just,
What a show of Mbappe,
yeah. He was
up
something
and
else.
coming.
Yep. You know, I think the kid who got the handball called on him, I think he scored one of the penalties. I'm not sure, but I hope he did. Was
He
it
scored the
Paredes?
third one, the second, yeah, Paredes.
I just, talk about redemption.
Yeah.
Talk about redemption. Because that's the one that put him up 3-1. Because
That's right, yeah.
France missed one and he saved one. He put the third one in, and now it's 3-1. Dude,
Psychological advantage there.
you gave your team that margin of safety to make it easier for the fourth guy to make it. What I thought was special about Messi's penalty was how softly he hit it. He did not hit that hard. Mbappe crushed his. Messi just hit it enough. That was wow.
He's done that more than once too, didn't he? Yeah, he would often just
Yeah.
gently stroke it in.
Yep.
He was waiting for the goalkeeper to make his move, but I mean, only Messi can see the micro, in that microsecond. Because even watching the replay, you know, it looks like he struck it the microsecond that
Yeah.
he saw the goalkeeper move. I mean,
It's
that's
the instant he thin slices,
yeah,
and the best drummers are like that too. Is their ability to find the micro slices and not commit until you've committed,
Yeah.
and then that difference, and you can't even see it, but it's the world slows down for them when that happens.
yeah.
He's
That's
something else.
just so amazing,
Yep. Well, good work again today, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank
That-
you.
that
Yeah,
bicycle-
thank you, Ken.
That bicycle
Yeah.
path story.
I like that a lot.
Man, oh man, you just got to dwell on that one. I may, if this thing with the AI guys, I'm sure it'll happen, but that may be a story for them. Especially when you put that little box on there and think about the departure from the center line. How much of the wobbling of the bike tells you that it's now into the chaos rush of breakdown, as opposed to just oscillating? It could go either way. No, it's decisive. Thin slicing that box and making the call that that's the way I'm betting. That's what we're doing with the minimum manageable risk box. That really illustrates the point a lot. Standardized bicycle. That's what you got to have. That's why
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah.
Standard bike. And at some point, it only has to be standardized enough that any bicycle is going to behave kind of in that way. You can spend a lot of time optimizing the bicycle, but at some point, send bicycles. Let's go. You gotta trade that thing. It's the shape of the pattern, the expectancy map, if we call it that way. That path map is the tradable entity. And that's what you're trying to design. You're trying to design a system that creates the largest volume, geographic volume, at the same time the strongest spine, but the widest spread in the shortest time. That's what you want. That's why, to me, that super pinch is so amazing, because it comes off of that mountain out the chute, like the guy coming off the ski jump. So controlled release. And now what is the so that's kind of That's what we're trying to get. Is that symbol in play? Why do I think that thing is about to go? How do I know it's in play? Well, a Z3 excursion that's already in the book and has started to turn, it's in play. It's either going to come back large or it's going to hesitate and fail large. It's in play. That's what distinguishes the compound critical state the most. I mean, how much kinetic energy, potential energy, is contained inside the smallest doji. That's what creates the tradable moment. So I'm going to hit it. I got doggies to take care of, and we started later, and Kyun is on cloud 9 and needs to float gently into joy. And
That's
Chunlong
right.
has got a system sketch to design, and so do you guys. So take good
So
care.
we're gonna meet again on the 1st.
Yeah, I guess when we get closer in there, we may look at that and say maybe there's a micro adjustment that we make, but that's a week. That's at least 2 weeks away. So we'll make an adult decision at that point,
Cool.
and then off we'll go. So take good care.
Sounds good.
I got doggies to care for. You guys are
Yep.
awesome.
Happy holidays.
Yep.
Merry
Yeah,
Christmas,
very
Happy
good.
everyone.
holidays, everyone.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Ken. Thanks
See you
all.
all.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.